The Cornelia Marie wasn't just a boat, she was a symbol of the Bering Sea. Launched in 1989 from Horton Boats in Bayou La Batre, Alabama, this steel-hulled crabber was built for one purpose: to conquer the unforgiving Alaskan waters. At 128 feet, long and with a beam of almost 30 feet, she wasn't the biggest boat out there, but she was tough, reliable, and built to last. Think of it this way: the Bering Sea is a battlefield. The elements are your enemy, and your vessel is your only shield. The Cornelia Marie was designed to be a formidable shield. Her reinforced hull could withstand bone-chilling ice and monstrous waves. She had the power, thanks to her Detroit diesel, engines to haul massive loads of crab, and the fuel capacity to stay out longer than many of her competitors. On the Bering Sea, time is money, and the Cornelia Marie could fish when others were forced to head back to port. That endurance made her a legend even before the cameras arrived. The name itself carries weight. Cornelia Marie Collins wasn't some mythical sea goddess or a good luck charm. She was the wife of the original owner, Ralph Collins, a partner in the business. Naming the boat after her wasn't just a gesture, it was a statement. This wasn't just about fishing, it was about family and hard work. That sense of family became even more potent when another figure took the helm: Captain Phil Harris. Phil Harris. Say the name, and images of a gruff, cigarette-smoking captain instantly pop into your head. When Phil took over as captain and part owner, in the late 90s, the Cornelia Marie wasn't just a boat. It became an extension of his own larger-than-life personality. Phil wasn't some polished, corporate-approved captain. He was a real fisherman, a product of the Bering Sea itself. He'd worked his way up from the bottom, learning the hard way that the sea shows no mercy. He pushed his crew, demanded loyalty, and ran a tight ship. But he also had a wicked sense of humor and a genuine care for the men who fished alongside him. They weren't just a crew, they were his family, and the Cornelia Marie was their home away from home. Then came Deadliest Catch. When Discovery Channel started filming in the mid-2000s, the Cornelia Marie quickly rose to prominence. The distinctive aquamarine hull and yellow trim made her instantly recognizable. But it was Phil Harris, with his swagger and salty language, that truly captivated viewers. He was authentic. He was flawed. He was relatable. He wasn't afraid to yell at his crew one minute and crack a joke the next. He wore his heart on his sleeve, even if that sleeve was stained with fish guts and grease. And he had his sons, Josh and Jake, working alongside him, adding another layer of family drama and genuine emotion to the story. Suddenly, the Cornelia Marie wasn't just a fishing boat on a TV show, she was a character in her own right. She represented the grit, the risk, the reward, and the family bonds that defined the Bering Sea fishing industry. Think about some of those iconic moments. Phil battling through health scares, pushing the boat to its limits. The aquamarine hull, slicing through mountainous waves. The Cornelia Marie wasn't just carrying crab, she was carrying the hopes of a family, the loyalty of a dedicated crew, and the dreams of millions of viewers who tuned in every week to watch their story unfold. When Phil Harris faced his struggles with his health, the boat became a symbol of resilience. The Cornelia Marie was proof that even in the face of the deadliest conditions, survival was possible. She was hope afloat. And as the show grew in popularity, the Cornelia Marie became synonymous with Deadliest Catch. Viewers looked forward to seeing her, season after season, like an old friend. She was a constant in a world of uncertainty. The boat that the Harris family built was one that the world could not seem to get enough of. She wasn't just steel, bolts, and engines. She was a story forged in ice and salt. And that story, for a long time, belonged to Phil Harris. But what happened after his death would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to the Cornelia Marie's shocking disappearance from the show. And that's a story we're going to dive into next. All right, let's dive into the complicated events that led to the Cornelia Marie's initial absence from Deadliest catch. It wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm. A collision of personal tragedy, family struggles, and the unrelenting pressures of reality TV production. First and foremost, we have to acknowledge the seismic impact of Phil Harris's death. Phil was the Cornelia Marie. His personality, his leadership, his very being was inextricably linked to that boat. Losing him was like losing a limb. It wasn't just a captain gone, it was the heart and soul ripped out of the operation, both, on and off the screen. Think about it. Phil's gruff demeanor, his unfiltered commentary, his unwavering commitment to his crew. That was what drew viewers in. He was a genuine character in a world of manufactured drama. With him gone, the dynamic shifted completely. The Cornelia Marie was suddenly rudderless, adrift in a sea of grief and uncertainty. Now, the immediate aftermath was chaos. Josh and Jake Harris, Phil's sons, were understandably devastated. They were thrust into a position they weren't entirely prepared for. They'd grown up on the boat, learned the ropes from their dad, but running a multi-million-dollar fishing operation and navigating the pressures of a hit television show is a whole different ballgame. The brothers publicly vowed to carry on Phil's legacy, to keep the Cornelia Marie alive. And for a while, they tried. They fished hard. They faced the cameras. They attempted to fill the void left by their father. But behind the scenes, things were far more complicated. You see, the ownership of the Cornelia Marie wasn't solely in Phil's hands. There were other stakeholders involved, and securing full control of the boat was a financial hurdle that Josh and Jake struggled to overcome. This created tension, not just with the other owners, but between the brothers themselves. They needed capital and fast. This is where the family turmoil really starts to bubble to the surface. While Josh was arguably the more focused of the two, determined to prove he could handle the responsibility, Jake was battling his own demons. His struggles with addiction, which had been hinted at even before Phil's death, spiraled out of control. Jake's issues weren't just a personal matter. They became a public spectacle. Arrests, DUIs, legal troubles, they all played out in the headlines, further tarnishing the Harris family name and, by extension, the Cornelia Marie's reputation. It was a PR nightmare, and it made it even harder for Josh to secure the financing he needed to keep the boat afloat. Banks and investors, already wary of backing two young men with limited experience, became even more hesitant given the negative publicity surrounding Jake. The Cornelia Marie, once a symbol of resilience and hard work, was now associated with addiction and scandal, and let's be honest, the cameras didn't help. Deadliest catch, while a captivating show, is still a show. There's a constant pressure to create drama, to find compelling storylines, to keep viewers engaged. The producers were undoubtedly aware of the turmoil within the Harris family, and you can bet they weren't shy about capturing it on film. This created a difficult dynamic. Josh and Jake were grieving, struggling to keep their father's legacy alive, and simultaneously dealing with the intense scrutiny of a television crew. Every argument, every setback, every personal struggle was documented and broadcast to millions of viewers. This relentless pressure undoubtedly took a toll. It strained relationships, amplified existing tensions, and made it even harder for the brothers to navigate the already treacherous waters of the Bering Sea and the cutthroat world of reality television. Now you might be asking, and let's not forget the bottom line: ratings. Deadliest Catch is a business, and Discovery had to make decisions that were in the best interests of the show's long-term success. If the Cornelia Marie's storyline was becoming too negative, too problematic, they had to consider other options. So, to recap, Phil Harris's death left a gaping hole in the Cornelia Marie's leadership and emotional core. Family turmoil, particularly Jake's struggles with addiction, created financial and reputational challenges. and the pressures of reality television amplified these issues, making it even harder for Josh and Jake to keep the boat afloat. This combination of factors created a perfect storm, a confluence of events that ultimately led to the Cornelia Marie's initial disappearance from Deadliest catch. It wasn't just one thing. It was a complex web of personal tragedy, family drama, and the cold realities of the entertainment industry. The Cornelia Marie would return, but things would never be quite the same. All right, so we know Josh Harris's image as the dutiful son honoring his father's legacy had completely crumbled. But the consequences of his actions extended far beyond his own career and reputation. In fact, it was one man in particular who felt the brunt of the fallout, a man who did nothing wrong, Captain Casey McManus. Casey, let's be honest, he was the rock, the steady hand on the Cornelia Marie for years. He wasn't just some random guy they picked up. He was the one ensuring the engines ran smoothly, the crab kept flowing, and the crew stayed on course when Josh's life was, shall we say, less than stable. A lot of people thought Casey was the unsung hero, the reason the Cornelia Marie remained competitive in such a cutthroat industry. One bad season out there in the Bering Sea, that can bankrupt a boat. You see, while Josh carried the emotional weight, the legacy of his father, Casey carried the actual weight, the operational backbone. When Discovery made that swift decision to cut ties with Josh, Casey was collateral damage. Not because he was guilty of anything, mind you, purely logistics. Josh still owned a piece of the Cornelia Marie, and that made it nearly impossible for the network to disentangle the boat from all the controversy. So, rather than deal with that mess, Discovery took the easy way out and erased the whole operation. Casey's contract? Not renewed. Poof. Years of loyalty, countless risks taken on the frigid Bering Sea, a reputation built from the ground up, all gone in an instant, and through absolutely no fault of his own. Talk about unfair, right? Fans were livid. Casey had earned his place, worked his way up the ranks, and then stepped up to take on greater leadership roles. To see him get the boot for something that had nothing to do with him? A lot of people accused Discovery of going for the lowest hanging fruit, punishing an innocent man instead of finding a way to keep him on the show. Casey himself later put out a post confirming the network's decision, calling it a bummer deal. Understatement of the century, Casey. But the collateral damage didn't end there. Not only was the Cornelia Marie missing from new episodes, but older. Seasons of Deadliest catch, featuring the boat, started disappearing from streaming platforms, trying to relive the classic days of Captain Phil. Too bad. Those episodes were missing, edited, or flat-out pulled. Discovery never really made an official statement about all these removals. But the message was clear. The Cornelia Marie, for all intents and purposes, had been erased from the show's history. For a lot of fans, this felt like a punch in the gut. The boat was so central to why they watched the show, it felt like a piece of history was being rewritten. And that brings us to a really tough question. Was Discovery's knee-jerk reaction about protecting its viewers, or about protecting its image? Sure, the network wanted to distance itself from Josh Harris, understandable, but deleting episodes, sidelining Casey McManus? That screams brand management over fan loyalty. Look, they could have handled it differently. Kept the Cornelia Marie on the show with new ownership, or even continued showcasing Casey without Josh. But they didn't. They opted for the clean break, sacrificing not just Josh's future, but the boat's entire legacy. And remember, Deadliest catch isn't supposed to be all sunshine and rainbows. It was always advertised as an authentic look into one of the world's most dangerous jobs. Now, here comes the corporate machine, reminding us that this is, after all, a product, a business. So the Cornelia Marie wasn't just removed, it was erased, a victim of television politics as much as personal scandal. But before you start writing that obituary, hold up. Because even stripped from television, the Cornelia Marie's story wasn't over. It was about to start a whole new chapter.